Well, hello, everybody. So, as a business coach, I meet a lot of folks, a lot of entrepreneurs who say they want to make 100K for the year. That's what they want to replace their salaries. They come up with this $100,000 number because I think that's what other people say that they should be striving for, etc. And while I think that's a great goal to look for in your business, especially when you're just starting out or you're a newer entrepreneur, it's somewhat arbitrary. And at the end of the day, I really want to know, like, what do you really want to make, and what's your path to get there? So, thank you all so much for joining me for Wisdom and Wellness today. My name is Carissa Begonia. I'm a business coach for BIPOC entrepreneurs, a LinkedIn expert, and top voice. I'm a second generation Filipino American daughter of immigrants and the first in my family to start my own business. I really believe that entrepreneurship is the path to equity and that life design is liberation. And at Conscious Exchange, we're creating this ecosystem and a movement of BIPOC entrepreneurs with a mission to achieve time, location, financial, and occupational freedom for themselves, their families, and their communities. So, thank you again for joining me on Wisdom and Wellness, where I share some practical tips and mindset tips as well around questions that I'm often asked when it comes to starting a business. So, if you have any questions or you want to say hi, share some love, etc., just go ahead and feel free to drop some comments in the chat. All right, so let's get into today's topic, which is around sales planning and finding out if the math is actually mathing, right? So when people say, "Hey, I want to make 100K," I'm like, "Okay, wonderful. How are you going to get there?" Right? And that's where kind of the blank stares happen. It starts to, you can see people's minds spinning about how is this actually going to be possible. And here's the good thing. I know how it could be very possible. It is super achievable to make that $100,000 in your business. And I have a few questions that I want you to ask yourself when you're coming up with, the sales goal. All right. So the first thing you need to know is, who is your ICA? Who is your ideal client avatar? And so Chris are like, "Hey, we're talking about sales. I want to do. I want to think about how I'm making my 100,000. Right?" I'm like, "Yeah." And it starts with knowing exactly who it is that you want to serve. Who is the person that you want to spend the most time with and really support with your service, right? And the reason we need to start here with that ICA is because, or that ideal client avatar again, is because we're building a product, we're building a service, a program, etc., is to support that particular person. And so when it's unclear about, okay, like, who are we serving, then the product also is unclear and unfocused potentially, right? There's lots of maybe components, there's parts. This is when you get involved with a million different offers because we're not really sure at the end of the day who we help. And I get this question or get this comment a lot. "Hey, Carissa, like I help a lot of people." I'm like, "Yes, you can, because you are brilliant." And just because we can help someone doesn't mean we have to. It doesn't mean we should. I often think about my ICA as someone who is in the Olympics, or somebody who stands at the top of the podium, right, at the number one spot. And while there's other winners, right, there's one person on that spot, right? And that athlete has a coach to help them get there, to get to that number one spot, right? You are that coach or that consultant, and the athlete is your client. So who do you want to win ultimately? Who do you want to stand on that podium? And that's how I help you think about who your ICA really is. Because when you can focus on who that person is, or that business, if you're doing B2B, right, you can, again, create solutions that are much more tailored to that person, as well as market solutions that are much more tailored because you're using their language, you're using their exact examples, etc. So getting clear on who exactly that ideal client avatar is, that ICA is the first step for you to actually figure out if 100K is actually going to happen. Is the math actually mathing? So let me back up for 1 second, because when I think about what the math actually math and why I think this is important is because it's just numbers, right? Our idea of how we make 100K sometimes has all these different components, but at the end of the day, it's about units. How many units do you sell of a product, and how much is that product, right? And then multiply that, and that's going to get you to your annual revenue, right? But we're not often concrete in the numbers and the math in how many clients we need, in the pricing. It's a little fuzzy, it's a little all over the place, right? And so again, that's why I'm coming back down to concretizing what your all these ideas and thoughts and wonderful things that are going on for you so you can get to the numbers. Like ultimately at the end of the day, the math needs to work. So back to the steps here. Number one, who is your ICA? Who is your ideal client avatar? So then that leads us to number two, like I was saying, once you know who that is, we're able to now move into knowing what your product is, what your service is. And here again, we can have a slew of different offerings, and that's cool. However, if you're newer, if you're starting, I advise if you are someone who's making less than 100,000 right now, to focus on one signature offer that you can put a lot of effort into and learn how to sell. So here's the thing with products and services, right? As experts, we're coming often from corporate, from nonprofits, et cetera, and are taking that expertise that we've accumulated over the last 5, 10, 15, 20 years, et cetera. And now it's saying, hey, I'm gonna provide that as a service independently of these organizations. So that's wonderful. And when you are starting your own business, you actually have two roles now. It's not just the first role is one, you are you're the expert. You're going to provide the service. That one's the easy part though for you. Two is you're learning how to be a business owner, which is there's a lot of things going on when you're first starting out understanding how to be good at being a business owner, being a CEO. You are now wearing the hat of the sales team, right? The marketing team, the operations team, the finance team. So no one else is doing this for you, especially in the beginning, and you have to know how to do all of it. So when you're learning all of those things, and maybe that was not your expertise in your prior roles, now you got to learn it, right? And so you're an expert, do that, but let's focus also your services and products into one main thing, one main driver, sales driver, while you're also now building a muscle of learning how to be a CEO. All right. So I encourage you to focus on one product that is coming from that one ICA, right? That really is the best, like the service and product that's going to be like the best that you can put out there. Because when you can put that service together and you can talk about it all day long, right? You start to become really good at marketing. When you're talking about it and you know the pricing of it, right? It's not a complicated pricing structure. It's not a complicated program, right? Or even if it is complicated, you have you have a one page or a deck right in front of you that tells you, I know how to speak to this exactly, and you've been practicing it, then you get really good at selling it as well, right? And then get building that muscle as a business owner. So know what your product is. Try to focus on one signature thing, one offer that's really the business driver of your, or the sales driver of your business, right? So ICA, one, two, product. All right, when it comes to the product, number three, when it comes to the product, we also need to know how much it is. Okay. So, and this is again where we get a little fuzzy. We're like, okay, well, if it's for coaches, for example, right? Okay, like if it's 3 months, it's $3,000, or I do sliding scale, and then I've got a VIP day, and then I over here, or we do 6 months, or every other week. There's like so many moving pieces, and we haven't solidified a package that's just like, here's what it is. So my encouragement to you is create a very straightforward package and one price for it as well. Again, you're trying to build the muscle of becoming a business owner or being a really, really sharp CEO and being able to speak to your offers. And so there's too many offers is one thing, but when there's too many pricing options and too many variables, you also start to stumble on your words, right? So be able to exactly explain what your service is and what the price is. And if you're doing some of your sales training, you know that when you say that price, you stay silent. You're like, okay, I've offered the price. Now we wait. Right? So are you easily able to talk about your offer and including that price? And so there's lots of different components sometimes when it comes to pricing. And we'll get into that in a second. But the other thing, so number four, the other thing that you need when you're like figuring out all the math in this for your sales is how many clients do you actually need to sell to? Right? So we know who the ICA is, what the product is, how much it is now. Well, how many units, quantities of that program do I need to sell? And even if you are my consultants in the world, right, or my agency owners or my service providers, right, you have a basic service often, And maybe you add on, there's some add-ons to it, or you can customize something, but there's often a baseline. So I share this with you because sometimes I'll get my consultants and they're like, everything's so custom. Like, it is and it isn't, right? You do have a baseline service that you do with excellence, and that's probably the thing that you're going to sell most of your companies, right? And of course, you can switch topics in and out. You maybe put add-on things, right? Maybe for a a consulting package, you might add some coaching in there for leadership development or whatever. But ultimately, there's usually a baseline, right? So, with that, how many units do you need to sell of your product for you to make the money that you want? Okay. And so when you come up with the number, sometimes again, that seems like arbitrary. Like, oh, I'll sell 5 coaching spots this month. I'm like, okay, cool. Can you? How are you gonna get those 5 units or 5 people? Do you have a lead generation strategy? Do you have a sales strategy for that? Do you have capacity to handle another 5 clients if you already have, say, 3 on deck that you're currently serving? Same thing with the consulting, right? So, like, are you able to manage more than 3 major projects with big companies at one time? I don't know. This is a question for you, right? So, how many units do you need to sell? All right. Next question is, well, how much money do you actually want to make? Or actually, let me back it up. How much money do you need to make? So, when we say again, this 100,000, um, it's this big it can be this big lofty goal and can make sometimes really scary. When you break that up into 12 months, right? Because we can think about, or even like weeks, but let's just say with months, you think about what you used to bring home in your income and your paycheck and your salary, right? And so that's a number I often like to use instead of, okay, 100,000, like let's just figure out how to get there. Well, what did you used to make? What was your take home on your paycheck monthly? Right? And maybe that's a number that you can use to start for yourself that will ground you in reality, right? It's like, oh, okay, I used to bring home a paycheck of 5 grand a month, right? 2,500 per every other week. Okay, cool. That's the number I want to replace, right? That helped me keep whatever lifestyle I had going. Or um, so either your paycheck or just again another number that based on what you need to make, meaning like, okay, between rent, between car payments, student loans, right, taking care of like groceries, child care, whatever it may be, what do you actually need to make? And is that, when you know what that number is for the month, what does that actually add up to? Is it 100K? Is it less? Is it more? But now that $100,000, like that's arbitrary number that you've pulled out of the air, becomes grounded in reality. And that's the whole thing I'm trying to get y'all to do, is figure out, don't just make up these numbers. Make them real, make them tangible and relevant. So how much do you need to make based on your current lifestyle, the current cost of your living, right? And then finally, we started businesses not because we were like, okay, we just want to replace the salaries. The option to start your business also gives you this option and expands your opportunities to make more, right? So not just saying, hey, let's survive and match what we used to do, but how do we exceed it? And how do we wildly exceed it? Right? We can be audacious, we can be ambitious, and when we're no longer kind of tied to our organizations that were telling us, hey, this is the value of your work, right? This is the cap on your salary. This is as far as you can go. If you want to make more, you got to wait another year, blah, 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 whatever. While there is risk in entrepreneurship, there's also reward in that you dictate that ceiling, right? So, what do you want to make? What is You might currently be in a certain like living situation, your current lifestyle, and maybe the first goal is to replace that. But what does it look like to go to exceed that and exceed that wildly? What is that? What could that even be? Right? And so, maybe do you want to send your kid to a different school? Do you want to move into a different home in a different neighborhood? Do you want to upgrade your car? Do you want to just pay off those student loans, right? Do you want to treat yourself to a nice vacation once, more than the once a year or once a year, and not worry about the money and just enjoy it? So be audacious, friends. What is it that you actually want to make? Because your business can give you an opportunity to actually make it happen. right? So that's my points for you today. In terms of figuring out, is the math actually mathing? It's grounding all of the numbers that we want to make for the end of the year in reality, making them real for you, including like who is that main ideal client avatar? What is the product that you are or service that you are creating to serve that person or that business? How much is it? Or yeah, how much is it? Three. For how many clients do you need per month, per quarter, per year? What do you need to make to maintain your current lifestyle? And then what do you want to make to be audacious about designing your life? Right. So that's my tip for you this week on figuring out what you like, if the math is actually mathing, what you really want to do with your business, and dreaming bigger. Right. And I know this could be there's a lot of moving parts sometimes. I threw a lot at you. And no worries, because I love to do workshops around this stuff, like around grounding things in reality, creating opportunities, making it easier for you to start this business. Because as BIPOC entrepreneurs, or as a BIPOC coach, I haven't seen enough BIPOC entrepreneurs. I want to see more of us out there, whether we are leaving our jobs, leaving corporate America, or doing things on the side, right? But having more options for your own income generation and your own time, financial, occupational, and locational freedom. All right. So if you are interested in learning how to actually get the math to work, I have some spreadsheets and a workshop coming up next Wednesday, 11:15 at 12 p.m. PT. So we can go through it together. You're going to get my proprietary worksheets that I give to my clients to help them figure out if the math is mathing, to help them like think about planning, their different products, how that adds up to a number at the end of the year, and playing with those numbers so that we're again not just making replacing our salaries, say, but widely exceeding them. So if you're interested in joining them, you can go into the link in the chat or in the comments, and you can sign up for that. Super excited to have you there. Otherwise, thank you again so much for joining me today on Wisdom and Wellness, and I'll see you next time. Bye.